Okay. Noeowin Naomi Bailey. I should say Tansy to begin. Nehio Cree Métis OG, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Hello, my name is Naomi Bailey, and I am Cree Métis.
Hi, Naomi. Sorry to bother you, but you're muted.
No, my mic is off.
I can hear you, Naomi. You're
Can
good.
you hear me? Okay. Okay. With great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge that today is Indigenous Disability Awareness Month. Trustee Morvey asked me to share that. Indigenous peoples of Canada experience a disability rate significantly higher than that of the general population. Indigenous Disability Awareness Month brings awareness of these barriers and the issues that Indigenous people living with disabilities and their families face every day. More importantly, though, in spite of these barriers, Indigenous Disability Awareness Month celebrates the achievements of Indigenous people living with disabilities and recognizes the significant and valuable contributions they make to our communities socially, economically, and culturally every day. And that is from the British Columbia Aboriginal Network on Disability Society. All right, moving on. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order to the agenda? If there is any, please put it in the chat. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Please put it in the chat. Okay, Greg has moved the motion. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Morvey has seconded it. So I'll call the question. All those, if you are not in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, please put it in the chat. Seeing none, the motion is passed. Approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 4th, 2023? Leanna, sorry, Leanna Pellegrin has put a motion in to approve the minutes, and Chantal Morvey has seconded it. Okay, can I call a question? All those in favor of the approval of the minutes? If you're not, please put it in the chat. Okay, seeing nobody against it, the motion is passed. Now we'll move on to presentations, and seeing that there is none, we'll move to senior staff reports. And Department 8.1, Department 8.1, Department of Learning Services. 8.1 Department of Learning Services. I really apologize for the background noise. I'm going to turn this over to Laura Tate, Deputy Superintendent.
Thank you, Trustee Bailey. I'm actually going to come on instead to start us off this evening. So good evening. I'm here to just reflect on the info sheet that was provided around parent and family engagement. So as noted in the info sheet, we were focusing on providing you with a very high level overview of the various ways that schools engage with their parents and family communities. An important aspect of a strong school community are the connections school staff have with parents and families throughout the year. Parents are their child's first teacher, and we certainly value all they bring to the school team. Ensuring parents and families feel welcome and connected with their school helps to create a sense of belonging for all and supports their child's learning journey. Outlined in the info sheet were a variety of ways that schools engage. Not all schools do all the approaches mentioned, and the approaches do vary from school to school. For example, open house is a very common elementary event but schools may have slightly different formats, different times of the day or evening that they offer them, and the approach that they use. This evening, we have Principal and Vice Principal from Pleasant Valley, Sarah Tyson and Sandra Shahi, here to share some ways that they've engaged parents and families in their school community and will be doing so throughout the year. If we could please welcome Sarah and Sandra as they share a little bit about their school.
Right, Squale, Anthropa, Sarah Tyson, and I'm principal at Pleasant Valley Elementary, and I have Sandra Shahi with me, who is vice principal. I'm just going to take a second to share my screen. I practiced before, so I'm hoping it goes smoothly. Is it on there, Sandra? Can you see it?
No, we don't have the PowerPoint. We have Sandra
Okay.
on there.
I see
So,
myself.
there we go. Now we have the PowerPoint.
There we go. Okay.
Now you do.
Okay, as mentioned, the presentation today is on parent engagement, focusing on our number of students, wanting to increase our number of students who feel welcome, safe, connected, and have a sense of belonging in their schools. And we know that in order for students to feel welcome, their families often need to feel welcome. I was in a meeting just recently with a family, and we're wrapping around this student right now, and the dad expressed that even coming into our building for the meeting was difficult for him because of his own experiences and thoughts he had from his past around what public school is like. And thankfully, by the end of the meeting, his views had shifted a little bit and felt that we were wrapping around his child. And it just goes to show how much collaboration we need between ourselves and our parents and families to really build success for their students and create that welcoming feeling. We also like our JEDI lens in the district for students, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. We also want to have that in the forefront of our minds when we're talking about our families, making sure that when we have our open house, which we had in September, we're offering it at a time that makes sense for a lot of families. So not right after school, as we know, lots of families work until 5 o'clock. So luckily at our building, our staff is very engaged and wanting to make this happen for as many families as possible. So we hold ours at 5:30 to try to be able to get as many families as we can. And we had a huge turnout. Most classes saw the majority of their families come and attend the open house. We do things like our parent-teacher interviews, which Sandra is going to explain in just a minute. We have special events like our winter concert, sporting events. Our football team won tonight, so they're headed to the finals. So we had lots of parents there watching that. We do a winter concert, and then for our older students, our music teacher puts on a band concert in the new year as well. And it was pretty fun to watch that last year with the families getting invited up to try their child's instrument as well. Above all that, I really believe, and we believe as a school, that open communication is extremely important. So this is just, obviously you can't read all the words on here, but it's just to show you what we send out each week. This is called our Friday Flash. I know at a lot of different schools, they have different names for it, but ours is our Friday Flash. I often highlight different things that are going on in the school that week, maybe things that we did that week, what they can look forward to the next week. It has important dates, information, links, Halloween reminders when it's Halloween, just to make sure that everybody's in the know and not feeling like they're missing something happening at school. And for a bit of fun, we always include some pictures from the week, obviously checking our consents to see which ones we can send home. And I've had lots of feedback of how much families enjoy seeing the snippets from inside the school that they don't often get to see.
And I'll just speak to the parent-teacher interviews, which we kind of phrase as a student-led conference in our school more, because we do encourage our students to be the leaders of their learning and to welcome to triangulate with their teachers and their caregivers. And there were two basic models that we used at our school. One was more of a one-on-one setting where parents would sign up for an interval of time. And the other was more of a group setting where several teachers would run multiple kind of conferences simultaneously using more of a scavenger hunt, showcase of learning type of a model. The one that I went with, and I'm giving an example of here, is the Learning Garden. So I would do a one-on-one interview with parents, and students would lead, and they would showcase their learning as a garden. So each sort of core curricular competency would be reflected as a living plant inside of their garden of learning. So you can see how they could show different ways to show how they feel about their own learning. And also they would be adding a self-evaluation piece for the core competencies, just to familiarize parents with the language that they're going to be seeing during the reporting periods as well. We would have students providing a personal and a professional goal for themselves, and they would outline that. We'll refer back to it later in the year. Inside of the sun or raindrops, they've put the learner needs that they need to be successful learners. And we talk about the mycelium, how everything is connected, that we're not just teaching things in isolation, but we can draw resources from other areas to have goal setting and to strengthen our learning in different areas, how everything is interconnectedness. This is an important piece. We also talk about 2 important adults that we have in our building, or that we feel are trusted adults. And I would have the student lead the conference, and I would chime in to give my perspective on the learning, because one thing I found interesting was that students, when it comes to their strengths and their stretches, that a common theme I was seeing was that they would undervalue their strengths. And so they may have an area that I see as a teacher as an area where they are proficient, or maybe even entering extending, and they may show it like a withered little root because their self-awareness. And then we can pull in the core competencies about, you know, understanding yourself as a person, as a learner, and social responsibility, and how we can incorporate our goals into those types of core competencies. So that piece was just interesting, but this was a wonderful way to summarize the learning and invite caregivers to comment on what they're seeing at home, and to just give a really holistic view of the child. So that was what we used at our school primarily. And Sarah and I will stay on for a few more minutes if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us about that. And Heichka, and it's very nice to be invited to share with you tonight. So thank you again very much for having us.
Naomi, you're muted.
I thought I had clicked on it. I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate all the effort that your staff is putting in to make students feel welcome. And I know I understand the effort, the extra effort and energy that is required to do that. So thank you. Do we have any questions? Looks like Tanya has a question.
Good evening. I'm joining you here from Vancouver. I really liked what you said when you used the phrase stretches. You didn't say weaknesses, you said stretches. Can you elaborate a bit more on that? Because just before you say that, before you do, I'll tell you why I'm excited by it. When I think of a weakness, I think of it as an is, like something that is just not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So anyway, I'll let you elaborate on that.
No, I agree with what you're saying. We often, we create expectations for learning in the classroom. And one of the things that we add to that list is make mistakes, because there is a fear for a lot of people to make mistakes. I see a lot of students that won't try because they might fail. So we just celebrate mistakes. When we make mistakes, we cheer, we clap. It's awesome, because those are the opportunities for learning. So everyone has stretches, everyone has strengths. I model that in the class. Teachers are modeling that. So there's this feeling of safety, that it's okay to not be amazing at everything right away, and that you have stretches, I have stretches, you have strengths that I wish I had, and we can just draw from each other. We are that connected network underneath the trees that are helping each other, and that's how you build community, and that's how everybody grows stronger together.
Thank
And
you.
Tanya, the stretches,
No.
language also comes from Shelley Moore, too, and in terms of inclusive education.
Awesome.
And our IEPs, so our individual education plans for students who are designated, also use that language. So instead of listing their strengths and weaknesses, we list their strengths and their stretches, the things they're working to get better at.
And correct me if you disagree, or challenge me if you disagree. I also don't necessarily think it's bad to let kids know that it's okay if there's some things that they're just never going to be great at.
Right.
For example, I have there's a joke between a friend and I. We go on road trips together, and the joke is I'm not the navigator because I can't read a map properly.
Everybody's got something to offer.
Yeah. So if we don't have the audio with the Siri telling us where to go, we're not relying on me, because we're not getting there if you're relying on me.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we do incorporate that same language into the reporting. So on the report card, a lot of staff will write, areas of strength, areas for further development, or some teachers will call them stretches, and then ways to support that learning. So next steps towards improving those areas, if that's one of your goals. Yeah.
All right. There's a few comments. Mark Robinson said, love it. Thank you. Friday Flash is a great idea and appreciate having the parent engagement in the evenings. And then Chantal Morvay said, thank you so much for this presentation. I find we all tend to undervalue our strengths. So glad our kids are learning to break that cycle. And Leanna Pellegrin said, thank you. Love this learning garden concept. What a beautiful way to visualize where each student is at. Really appreciate the later evening as well. And then Lindsay Watford said, Pleasant Valley seems like a wonderful place to learn and grow while building a strong, engaged community. Well done, Sarah and Sandra.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Pleasant Valley, Sarah and Sandra. Really appreciate it. And I will turn this back over to Jackie.
Thank you so much. That wraps up the section for me, and I'll turn it back to you for the next, I believe, 8.2, unless there's any other questions for me in regards to the info sheet.
Okay, seeing none. So 8.2, Department of Learning Services. And to Laura Tate for introductions. Is that you, Jackie, though? Are you covering for Laura?
I can turn it over to Director of Instruction, Nicole Davey, who will be coming on to do that. I see Laura's just popped on as well. So
yeah, we got it all smoothed out. Trustee Bailey, they're just moving from one to the next, and I'm in the background cheering.
Great. Thank you so much. And I just want to also thank Sarah and Sandra for their presentation. It's a beautiful example of bringing parents into the school environment and community and using lots of different ways to do that, and really being intentional with meeting the unique needs of your school context. So thank you for sharing. That was lovely. And my topic is actually closely related to that. I'm going to be giving an update on how we are creating opportunities for PVP and educators to fully implement the new K-12 reporting policy and assessment. So this year, we are fully implementing the new K-12 student reporting policy. We are very lucky as a district to have been involved in a pilot project for the last few years that have created a beautiful foundation from which we can build from. So much of what the changes have meant for our district, we've already engaged in those changes. So our job last year was to just deeply understand the new policy and how it was going to impact our district. So we did that in a number of different ways. We brought together two different assessment groups. One was a secondary assessment group and one was an elementary assessment group. And they were comprised of teachers and principals and learning coordinators and myself. And we met at least 3 times a year to go over different pieces of the new reporting policy. What we noticed is that our district was definitely further ahead in many different areas. And we also noticed some areas that we knew we were going to need to focus on to make sure that teachers felt really confident to be fully meeting the new policy. So once we completed our group last year, we made plans to move ahead with how to support the system with the new implementation of the policy. And I wanted to just talk briefly about the new policy. In 2016, we had a redesigned curriculum, and the new reporting order was intended to better meet the needs of that new redesigned curriculum. So the new reporting policy is, as I mentioned, a perfect complement to parent engagement. It focuses on meaningful communication. So research stresses the importance of ongoing, comprehensive, and timely communication with parents and caregivers. It has an absolute positive impact on student learning and student ownership. The policy also focuses on proficiency. So assessment that is focused on student proficiency in relation to the learning standards, and the learning standards are commonly known as the subject areas like language, arts, or science. So in relation to the established learning standards, it leads to improved reliability of assessment results and increased student engagement. And the new policy also emphasizes student self-assessment, which also leads to an increase in student confidence in their abilities, greater responsibility for their own learning, and greater student satisfaction. So how are we going to ensure that our principals and vice principals and our teachers know the changes that are coming and feel confident in implementing those changes? Well, the first thing we did was update our current guidelines. So we have revised our secondary reporting guidelines and our elementary reporting guidelines. And that was done at the end of last year as well, as part of the work of those assessment groups and also through the work of our learning coordinators. We've also been involved in provincial meetings and professional learning where we connected with other districts to see what they were doing, just to make sure that we really felt that we were living the best practice in reporting and assessment. And it was important for us to have it co-created so that teachers were involved, principals were involved, and coordinators were involved. So we have our new guidelines, we have them published, and we are sharing what we call snapshots with our principals and vice principals at our regular meetings. The policy is comprehensive, robust, but it's 73 pages. And not only does it go through the reporting pieces, but it also is it's very detailed in terms of good assessment pedagogy. So while last year we really wanted to make sure that we had our guidelines that helped teachers understand what the reporting is going to look like throughout this year, we now really want to be supportive with culturally responsive and best assessment practice and pedagogies. So we are once again reviving our assessment groups, but we're giving them a bit of a refresh where our focus is not just understanding the nuts and bolts of the policy, but going much deeper into that assessment practice and pedagogy, because we know that formative assessment practices absolutely impact student learning. We are, in addition to our snapshots, we are providing regular communications to our teachers. We have a newsletter called Learning Your Way, which is shared out to teachers, and there are little snippets in there. And we are providing reporting, we call them town halls, so that teachers can pop on a Teams meeting after school and just get any questions that they have answered. We have learning coordinators and myself available. What we have noticed is last year, our principals and vice principals have done a really good job front loading our teachers in terms of what to expect with the policy. So while we're still getting questions and teachers are still a little bit apprehensive about change, everybody always gets a little bit nervous with change no matter what. We feel that overall the teachers are responding very positively to the changes. I'm just going to touch on one of the biggest changes for elementary. The new policy states that we have to have 2 written learning updates, which we would typically call report cards, and 1 summary of learning. So the 2 written learning updates would be our December and March report cards, and our summary of learning is our June report card. And this was different than in previous years where our formal reporting would have happened in February and then in June. And now we have it at 3 points in our ERC. We also have other points of communication throughout the year as well. But that change, what really came about from parent feedback, who really wanted to have a consistent formal reporting framework across the district. And they wanted to have that before Christmas, just to make sure that if there was anything going on, that there would be no surprises. So in addition to our written learning updates and our summary of learning, and this is also happening at our secondary level as well, we also have 2 informal reports that happen throughout the year. And you heard beautiful examples from Sarah and Sandra about their parent conferences. And that is one example of informal reporting. So we do have district-wide communications and supports to make sure that everybody understands what's happening with the reporting policy. But we also have lots of opportunity for individuals to come forward with questions. And we have been going to staff meetings as well, and definitely our learning line, which is where teachers can email with their questions and get a prompt response. We also have been reaching out to our PACs, and I have created a video/PowerPoint for principals to share with their parent advisory committees, giving an overview of the changes to the reporting policy. And I was also able to present at the DPAC meeting last week. So that was a great opportunity for me to be able to share the new updated guidelines and to answer any questions. And there were a lot of really, really good questions. So I'm going to be making my attendance at those meetings a regular occurrence, and they just really appreciated having someone there that could answer those questions. And it's interesting how one question often leads to another question, which often leads to another question. We are also working on making sure that our reporting platforms match the reporting guidelines, but also match our beliefs and values around assessment. So we use a platform called MyEd for secondary, and right now we use a platform called ERC for elementary. So we are seeing some changes to the MyEd platform to make sure that aligns with the reporting guidelines. We are moving away from ERC this year into another elementary platform. We're not sure what one is going to be the one yet. We are in an exploration. MyEd can be available for elementary, so that one is the most used throughout our province, and it is the one that most aligns with the Ministry of Education. So we're definitely looking into that. Our current one is reaching end of life. And then the final type of platform that we are starting to use is something called Spaces. And it's an electronic portfolio. It's optional right now, but we are really excited about the potential Spaces would have for supporting our reporting policy, and then just providing one more opportunity for parents to reach out and engage with teachers. Assessment, communicating student learning. We try to have lots of different ways, but we also know that parents and families have different needs. And as Sarah had mentioned, some families feel uncomfortable coming into the school, so parent conferences are really hard for them. Using a platform like Spaces allows them to have pictures and communications in real time and learning conversations with teachers and even their students who can reflect on their work. So that's something that we are really excited about exploring. I did, in addition to my info sheet, I did share some resources just so that you can get an understanding of the reporting policy and the communication that we are sharing with parents and caregivers out to the system. So this will be something that we will definitely be supporting, but the needs of our district kind of change. And right now we're really excited about building capacity of teachers to use really vibrant and robust assessment strategies with a special focus on secondary, which can be especially challenging. So thank you all, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Jessica, I have a comment. Jessica Krog Irving has said, I appreciate the change in reporting so much. Our younger learners change and grow so quickly. It is wonderful to see the added assessment for students and their caregivers.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Jessica.
Yeah.
And Trustee Morvay has a question.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. Awesome. I tried reading the whole thing. I mean, I got through 90% now. I'm at 90%, so I'm pretty proud of myself on this one. So I have a lot of questions to delve into it a little bit more. And I think people who are more familiar with reporting policy in general might see not as many big changes, but for me, it was very eye-opening to understand sort of the background of it. So I encourage everyone to read the government K-12 student reporting policy that's come out. It's large, it's big, but it's really helpful to understand that background information. So I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to stick to one with perhaps a follow-up for now, and then let other folks ask.
Of course.
Right. So I heard that, okay, so I see in our package here that we have the student 8 to 12 reporting guidelines that was included in our package. Would you say that that's kind of like the condensed Coles notes of the reporting?
Yes, yes. So absolutely. I mean, the full policy is so good. There's like all of it is so good. And I mean, 75 pages is a lot, and it is very dense and comprehensive. So we really tried to pull out the things that would definitely teachers would need to know. And that's why we are also supplementing with snapshots on a monthly basis where we can delve a little bit deeper. So the past month, we went deeper with descriptive feedback. So I put together a PowerPoint and a little movie attached, just so we could go deeper into that descriptive feedback piece. And following up, we're going to go into what we call an IE. So we will provide more information with that in the next snapshot.
Right. Yeah, the IE, which is what does that stand for again? Incomplete, or what is it called again?
So it used to be, I used to be incomplete. Now the IE is insufficient evidence, and
there we go.
It's different, and it's kind of shifting a mindset in terms of assessment. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. There's so much to dig into. I'm not going to do that all. My question is, though, is there a student elementary reporting guidelines document?
Yes, and it's funny that you mentioned. My apologies, that should have been included in your package. Somebody just texted me and said, oh, we didn't get it. So yes, I'm happy to provide that, and it's also on NLPS Learns, but I will pop that and give that to Karen right away so that you have that. And it would be something similar, but obviously K-7.
Great, awesome. So that wasn't my full question. So Naomi, if you don't mind, I'll ask like a follow-up question sort of thing. It's more of a technical thing, and something I sort of asked you at the DPAC meeting.
Yeah,
You can have a follow-up, Trustee Morvay.
Thank you. This is in regards to students with designations who are in modified plans. We're not going to get into technical aspects of modified versus adapted and all that, but I'm curious, when do families start talking with the school-based team about a student being on an evergreen pathway or a dogwood pathway? When does that sort of conversation start to happen? When can families expect that to start happening?
Well, and this is where I would actually really like to defer to Kirsten or Carrie, who would be, our directors of inclusive education, because they would definitely have much more, I think, like detailed information about that. Our conversation last week from DPAC is, those conversations should be ongoing. There should never be any surprises with parents. And we always are careful whenever we are recommending a change to an evergreen from a dogwood, but it is definitely, it's a collaborative decision, ongoing, and definitely reach out to Kristen and Carrie for more of those pieces, Chantel.
It looks like Don and Jackie both popped up here, so I don't know if they want to answer too.
Happy just to join in. I know schools start conversations around Evergreen for any students who might be heading on that path quite early. The graduation program doesn't begin until grade 10. So often those conversations of supporting students to see whether they're going to be able to make it to the Dogwood completion, even if they have a designation and they may have an IEP that might indicate it'll be a challenge to make it through the Dogwood. Students don't get placed on that Evergreen path until very, very late, and with full consultation with parents that are involved in the IEPs, it's never a surprise.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Yeah, because I was looking at page 109 of our agenda where they talk about that. And so that was very, very interesting. And it's great to know that it's going to be on the report card or the communication with families too, right? So it'll be there, everyone can see it, they know it's written down and stuff like that, which is really fantastic. So that's great. I don't have any more, well, I do have questions, but I'm going to let other people perhaps take some on.
You're muted, Naomi.
It isn't one thing, it's another. It's the mute button today, for goodness sakes. Thank you very much, Trustee Morvay. There's a comment from Jessica Krog Irving. Carrie is so lovely, and our district is very lucky to have her. But as was said at DPAC, that conversation is unique for each student and their situation. Thank you, Jessica. Do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. I'd just like to thank you very much for that very detailed, comprehensive report. I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into pull out all the information and make sense of it. So thank you very much, Nicole.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful evening.
Yes, you too. Okay, moving on to 8.3. Our superintendent, Scott Sewell, on artificial intelligence.
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair. Staff have been asked to present to the board on the topic of artificial intelligence, and Assistant Superintendent Dawn Belcombe and I are here to do just that. So I'm going to start with a bit of a history and share some definitions, and then Dawn's going to take it over and talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of AI use in education. So artificial intelligence, AI, refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think and learn like humans. AI systems can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and language translation. Concept of artificial intelligence has been around for quite some time. It dates back to ancient times with myths and legends featuring intelligent machines. The modern era of AI began in the mid-20th century with the work of mathematicians and computer scientists such as Alan Turing, who's the guy in the middle of the screen, and John McCarthy. I'm going to talk about Alan Turing. You might have heard that name before in just a minute. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers began to develop algorithms and programs that could simulate human intelligence. These early AI systems were limited in their capabilities, but they laid the foundation for future advancements. In the 70s and 80s, despite initial enthusiasm, the progress in AI was slower than expected, leading to what is known as the AI winter. Funding and AI research was all but frozen, decreased many times due to many unmet expectations. In the early 80s and 90s, there was a notable surge, and this era was kind of marked by renewed interest in artificial neural networks, which are computational models inspired by the structure and functioning of the biological neural networks like the human brain. In 1997, some of you might remember IBM's Deep Blue defeated world chess champion Garry Kasparov, marking a major milestone in the development of AI. In recent years, AI has made significant strides in areas such as natural language processing, computer vision, and machine learning. And today, AI is being used in a wide range of applications, like self-driving cars, like the Tesla, to virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa. So I mentioned Alan Turing. He's one of the pioneers, and you may have heard something called the Turing test, which is a test to assess machines' ability to exhibit human-like conversational skills and understanding. So in the Turing test, a human evaluator engages a text-based conversation with both a human and a machine without knowing which is which. If the evaluator cannot reliably tell which is a machine and which is a human, then the machine is said to have passed the Turing test and demonstrated a level of artificial intelligence that is indistinguishable from human intelligence. Typically, when we think of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT often comes to mind, and for good reason. It is one of the most commonly used forms of artificial intelligence today, and is certainly getting lots of headlines. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about ChatGPT and what it means. So chat means, the first part, chat, that refers to a chatbot. So a chatbot is a computer designed to simulate conversations with human users, typically over the internet. It is a type of artificial intelligence that can understand and respond to natural language inputs from users, providing them with information and assistance. The G stands for generative. This signifies the model has the ability to generate text, including responses to questions or prompts. The P refers to pre-trained. This means that the model has been trained on a vast amount of text data before it's used for a specific task. So pre-training allows a model to learn language patterns and general knowledge from the training data. T stands for transformer. So the transformer is a type of neural network architecture that's been highly successful in natural language processing tasks. It uses self-attention mechanism to understand and generate text in a more contextually aware way. So in essence, ChatGPT is an AI model that is pre-trained to generate text in a conversational manner using transformer architecture. It's capable of understanding and generating human-like responses in text-based conversation. Now, if you're anything like me, some of that, or maybe all of it, didn't make much sense. So I asked ChatGPT to explain this like I'm 14. And here's what ChatGPT says. Well, of course, there's a human element. ChatGPT is like a smart computer program that can have text conversations with people. Here's what each part means. Chat, this means it can talk to you through text, like texting with a friend. Generative, it can generate sentences and answers on its own, like when you write a story or answer a question. Oops, sorry. Pre-trained, it's like this program did a lot of homework by reading tons of books and websites to learn about many different things. And transformer, this is a special way it works, kind of like how a brain thinks, to understand what you say and give good answers. So ChatGPT is a smart computer that can chat with you, make up sentences, and is very knowledgeable because it's read a lot of stuff online. It works in a clever way to understand and talk to you. So if you're wondering if ChatGPT can pass the Turing test, the answer is that while it is highly advanced and capable of engaging in natural language conversations, it may not consistently pass the Turing test in all scenarios. So the ability of ChatGPT to pass the Turing test depends on a few factors like the complexity of the conversation, and the skills of the human evaluator. So ChatGPT can provide human-like responses, but it may still have limitations in fully understanding and responding to highly nuanced or contextually complex conversations. Currently has 100 million plus users, and the website sees nearly 1.5 billion visitors per month. The program continues to be free, although I think around February they released what's called ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month. That's US. US has the highest number of users at just under 15%, followed by India at just over 8%. It can generate 25,000 words and understands over 26 languages. 56% of the users are male, 56% are male, and 44% are female. And recently, I believe in May, they came out with the ChatGPT iOS app, which reached 5 million downloads in just 3 weeks after it was launched. ChatGPT, of course, is not the only game in town. While it's the most common AI, there's lots of others used for coding and image generators and image editors, screen recording, content generators, writing and editing, music presentation creators, audio editing, music creation, much, much more. These AI technologies have greatly expanded the possibilities and efficiencies of various creative and productivity tasks. I use it almost daily, and it is certainly revolutionizing the way we work and we create. So thank you for your attention, and I'm going to pass it on to Dawn. When you give me a wink, Dawn, I'll advance the slide.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. So I want to talk in my little section here around artificial intelligence in schools and focus on the pros and cons. And we're going to go from familiar technology and artificial intelligence. And as Scott was talking about, ChatGPT as a generative artificial intelligence is just on that continuum of technology that has crept into our lives over the last number of years, quite a long time. And so I'm going to start off with some familiar technology to most of us and talk about the pros and cons of that. And then I'll talk about some of the more unfamiliar technology that that Scott referenced as well. So we'll go to the next slide, Scott. So pros and cons of familiar technology. A calculator is something that's a very common piece of technology in schools, and there's a upsides to it. It assists us with basic calculations and computations, as well as providing complex formulas and algorithms that allow us students to engage in things from algebra to calculus. So you can imagine on an upside, if we didn't have a calculator and we wanted to solve some algebra or calculus questions, doing it by hand would take a significant amount of time to look at a formula and apply each step of a multi-step process. So calculators are very helpful in that sense. The downside, of course, to a calculator is that you may not learn basic computational skills because you don't need to know what 6 times 4 is if you can just plug it into your calculator. And so when you get to algebra and you're trying to make combinations of numbers that multiply together to one thing and add together to another, you don't have the basic calculations in your head and memorizations that perhaps your parents or grandparents may have had. So there's challenges there. Of course, there's user error. If you plug in the wrong data into a calculator, you get the wrong answer. Spell check is pretty obvious. The upside for spell check is if I misspell the same word 5 times while I'm writing a letter to or an email to a friend, the spell check reinforces and provides feedback constantly that I'm spelling that word wrong, and it corrects me on how to spell it right. So much better than having a teacher who might check my misspelled word once every time I hand something in, which might be once a week. So I get a much better feedback loop. So spell check's a common thing that has lots of upsides. Grammarly, which is just a grammar tool that helps students provide feedback on their grammar and their punctuation and errors. So you might have tense agreement challenges, or you may have misplaced modifiers or improper punctuation, and Grammarly is a simple tool that provides constant feedback to help improve your writing. Do I put me here or I there? And you put one or the other, and Grammarly puts a little red squiggly underneath it and helps you correct that. So there's upsides there. Downside, of course, is it's difficult if you are assessing grammar, if students don't complete work in front of you, pen and paper. So if they're using technology or they're doing it at home, there's a chance that you're not actually assessing if you want to assess grammar. Speech to text is fabulous, and text to speech. The upside, of course, is that text can be read out loud to you. So if you have a learning disability around reading, speech to text allows you to speak into the technology, which can record it for you. So there's upsides there. The downsides, of course, are if I'm working to learn to read and I just have the text to speech and it's reading to me or read aloud, that may slow my progress a little bit on that. Go to the next slide, please, Scott. Some of our more unfamiliar or less familiar or emerging artificial intelligence are generative AI, as well as virtual reality or augmented reality and mixed reality. So I'll give you an example, a little bit more information on the pros and cons for ChatGPT that Scott spoke about earlier. There's a lot of upsides and pros to ChatGPT, and as Scott mentioned, since November there are countless users, myself included. And if you Google, what can I use ChatGPT for in education, the results are almost endless. ChatGPT is a very good focused search engine, so you can, instead of just hitting Google or hitting Bing, you can narrow your search and it'll comb through things and come up with a very focused search for you. ChatGPT is very good at generating reading passages, and you can change them for a variety of grade levels. So you might want to have a reading passage about a narrative story of a wilderness scene, and you can ask ChatGPT to write the story. You can ask it to write it as Scott did for someone who's aged 14. You could have it written for somebody who's reading at the grade 1 level, the grade 2 level, the grade 6 level, the grade 9 level, and post-secondary level, and have students access that same reading material, that same story written at a level that's appropriate for the reading. You can create practice material. So there's an endless supply of prompts that you can put in that students can use for checking your understanding. So if you've covered a topic and you want to, a teacher wants students to check their understanding, you can say, give me 45 examples of questions that would allow students to demonstrate their understanding on this topic, and it'll spit out 45 ones, 3 each for the 15 students that have asked for it. ChatGPT is great at creating templates for emails, newsletters, and other communications. So often our school leaders or our teachers are sending out routine communication out to families. ChatGPT can create templates where you're going to say, create a section for upcoming events next week, create some highlights for the week. It can templates that are easy to fill in. ChatGPT is great for writing prompts. So you can say, start a story about 2 young bear cubs that get separated from their mother, and then have students use that as a writing prompt to carry on the story. Or you could say, start a story about a moody teenager that says something hurtful to their best friend in front of the entire class. ChatGPT will get that story rolling, and then you can ask students complete the story. So it's really good for having students engage with materials where they're staring at a blank page saying, I don't know where to start. ChatGPT can start. Great at generating questions for discussion topics. ChatGPT is a master at making lists. So it's like, write a list of adjectives. Boom, you've got a list of 150 adjectives you can share with students. List 10 cities in Canada with populations between 10 and 15,000 residents. There's your list of students. It's a research starting point for students. Make a list of all the fruits and vegetables that grow in the tropics. There you go. Students want to research fruits and vegetables that grow in a tropical country. Make a list of scientists who've won a Nobel Prize and have also attended an Ivy League university. Zeroes in. Student says, I'm interested in studying a scientist, but I don't know where to start. There are lots of downsides of ChatGPT as well in the education field, not the least of which is privacy and security of data issues. There's nothing to stop a student or a teacher from putting in private information into ChatGPT, which may end up being shared with people that they don't want to share it with. ChatGPT, although it has a wealth of reading online, as Scott said in his 14-year-old review, it is not always accurate or up to date. So there's no guarantee that everything that comes out of ChatGPT is accurate. It is not live and interactive with websites currently. It gets it's offline. It gets fed information. So if you asked it, for example, about a current conflict that broke out, or a current event that happened yesterday, it would have very generic information about the topic, but it would not have any of the specifics. ChatGPT obviously can be used to cheat. It's difficult to determine plagiarism. If I write in prompts into ChatGPT and narrow it down and redo 3 or 4 different prompts later, and then hand that in as my own authentic work, it's very difficult to use plagiarism software tools out there to be able to determine it, because it truly is the only time that ChatGPT has generated that particular piece of writing for me. So it's important that we talk to schools about the use of generative AI and giving credit that it was supported through generative AI or began there. ChatGPT struggles with some human elements. It doesn't do a great job of showing empathy or providing the tone for a writer, and so it's important that we acknowledge the limitations. The other piece about some emerging technology I'd like to just chat briefly about is virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. So one of the pros of virtual and augmented reality is the pro of virtual reality is, think of somebody with the goggles on and they're in a different world, living in a digital world, having a digital experience. It allows for very enriched learning experiences that may otherwise be inaccessible. So think of somebody who wants to be in a virtual reality at Victoria Falls in Kenya. Well, you can put goggles on and be there. The chance of seeing it live in person is inaccessible for most people. Flight simulators are a fantastic way. Imagine how safe it is to crash a 747 repeatedly in a flight simulator, and before you ever do some pilot training. It's augmented, it deepens the learning experience while interacting with things that are real. So augmented reality allows kind of that blend of I'm looking at a real object, say a plant, and the augmented reality allows me to hold a screen over it with the app that helps identify the plant or provide additional information. It allows me to be interactive and augment the reality of the event through some digital generative learning. Mixed reality allows kind of a combination for me to interact in the 3-dimensional world with the real world, but also have technology interact with that. So think of somebody who's on a construction site with some mixed augmented reality software. They're physically on site. They might have an image, a digitally created image of what the building might look like, but physically they see the slope of the land. It overlays the digital architectural software, allows it to say, here's what leveling might need to happen before this 3-dimensional building is there. So it's a very emerging, exciting opportunity for people to engage with technology. The downside, of course, is that things can be wrong. So, in a flight simulator, there's a certain aspect of training in flying planes with people in it that you simply cannot get by sitting inside of a simulator. In augmented reality, the software may be inaccurate and it may be pointing at a plant and mislabeling it, and you may think it's not poisonous and you nibble on it and it turns out to be poisonous. So there's always inaccuracies and challenges for all of our software. And there's a brief overview of some of the pros and cons of both our familiar and unfamiliar or less familiar or emerging artificial technology. And I'll turn it back to Scott. You're on mute, Scott.
Thank you. I thought we would just end with this slide. I got a couple of these today in the email, and these are just courses or books you can read. And if you wanted to know a little bit more about AI, there's lots of great information out there. This one just came today. It's a webinar, Teaching with AI, Tools and Tips. It's Thursday, November 9th. This one came as well in the bottom left corner from Harrison Co. They're a law firm that does a lot of work with school districts, and it's about the policies and pitfalls in AI in the workplace. This here is what's called a MOOC, which is a massive open online course that you can take for free. I took this one about 6 months ago. It's very good. You can see it got a 4.8 rating out of 5. And this is another massive open online course that you can get free online. Or if you pay for the course, you can also get a credential as well. And this is just a book I read over the summer. So there's lots of great information out there if you want to learn more. Finally, I'm going to zip back to the beginning, and we did the little Turing test on you. One of us got their information from ChatGPT and created all of the slides through ChatGPT, and the other did it like you would typically, taking slides from the internet. So all of my slides were created by an image generator, and you can tell as I look back on this one, I didn't notice it at first, but so I asked the image generator to create a picture of a robot touching the hand of a human in the way like Michelangelo's hands. And I didn't notice until just before the presentation that this is obviously computer generated because there seems to be too many fingers here if you count the number of fingers. But the beauty about generating a picture, no one else has this picture. I didn't take this off the internet. It was generated for this PowerPoint, as was this one, as was this one, as was this one. So that's kind of the beauty of those image generators as well. And there are programs. This one was Tome, T-O-M-E. You go to the website and it creates the PowerPoint and some of the text for you as well, once you give it sort of an initial idea of what you want to talk about. That's our presentation. Thanks very much. I know we'll hang around for questions.
Thank you very much, Scott, and AI, I guess, for helping with the presentation. We do have some questions. We'll start with Tanya. She said a great presentation. I do have a question or two. All right, Tanya.
Thank you. Well, they basically go together. I guess my question is, and Dawn, you sort of hit on part of it when you made the point about privacy concerns and being able to use it to say something about somebody that maybe they didn't want shared. There's not really anything we can do to stop that, is there? And I guess what are the policy implications for us around that kind of thing? And I'm probably leaning to you towards that, Scott. Would you see this, Scott, more as something where we would simply add references to AI to some of our policies, or that we need new policies?
Well, that's why I referred to that talk that's going to be given by Harrison Company. It's kind of the Wild West of AI right now, and there are all manner of implications around, policy and freedom of information and bias and all kinds of things. And we need to talk more about that, frankly.
Yeah,
Tanya.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I can follow up, then Naomi, because it's sort of similar on the same lines. I guess my questions, when you and I, Scott, first started having conversations about this, I was really shocked. A friend of mine, who is admittedly a techie, made up a story for his daughter, made his daughter like the center of a story. And I thought to myself, well, if he could do that, and it was just a fun fictional thing for his 9-year-old, it was no big deal. It was great. But could a teenager then not make up a story about a peer that was not so great? That they were doing something inappropriate, illegal, or, start a rumor about somebody. And I don't know why, but we already have problems in schools sometimes, I know, with bullying and that kind of stuff. And I just wonder if we're looking at a new element to it and how we can be aware of that. And I guess that's, again, something that can come up in that Harrison Company thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think students could do those things before. It makes it a little bit easier now. And I appreciate what Dawn shared about some of the pros and cons about AI, and it's, you know, it's brand new. It's going to grow. It makes me think about deep fakes a little bit as well, and as we start to learn more about those things. So video can be faked, of course, as well, and people can take a snippet of your voice and then turn that into a conversation using your voice online
That's
or
exactly
on the
the kind
telephone.
of thing that worries me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is really concerning.
Yeah, and I guess our liability in those things if it happens at school. Yeah. But again, that's more just food for thought and things that I hope we can learn more about. And I'd be really interested to hear about that Harrison workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Thanks,
right.
Tanya.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. Mark, you have a question.
Thanks, Naomi, and thank you, Scott and Dawn, that and the AI program that you used. The presentation was very eye-opening, for sure. I have a question, but Tanya sort of beat me to it, or rather, Tanya beat my AI to it, because I asked this question because I use AI from time to time. I used it yesterday on a contest on my Facebook. So anybody who wanted to join the contest, go for free. It's public. The question was, you are a school trustee on a school board. Ask a question to your superintendent that is intelligent about AI in your school district. And the question was, what measures are currently in place to ensure that AI technologies are used responsibly and equitably in an educational environment? And Tanya sort of talked about policies and procedures. So, you know, how human that question was, because that was a question that was on a lot of our minds. So, and you sort of answered it. So I guess I'll ask my follow-up question, which was, we're currently using AI in classes, right? Like we're using it to a large degree. We used it tonight for our meeting. Maybe we need to get some policies together if we don't already, for sure. Yeah, it's scary stuff. I mean, it's good, it's bad, and it's concerning. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Dawn. And I'll leave it at that, unless you want to just touch on further anything about what we have in place currently at all in terms of dealing with AI and policies around that.
Yeah, we don't have any policies presently around AI, and as I said, it is kind of the Wild West. It's new. It's very beneficial for teachers, for differentiating instruction, for all kinds of things. You know, creating quizzes, and Dawn shared a couple examples. You know, so, you know, you have a text that, you know, you have maybe someone in your class who's not reading at grade level. And then so you can pop in that text and say, create this text for someone reading at a grade 5 level. For differentiating instruction, it's magic. I hope every teacher is using it. But you're right, Mark. And the challenge is of students using it to cheat, frankly. And I think we're in a new sort of era in education where, you know, I think it's kind of the show your work era. So teachers are going to be asking students to show their work to ensure that it's their own work often. And that's a, you know, great teaching tool anyway, to talk about an essay that someone's handed in. Or Dawn shared the idea of starting a STEM through ChatGPT and a student finishing it, or vice versa. I can't even imagine all the ways that teachers are using it right now, but I know they are. I've talked to a few. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks, Mark.
Scott.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Mark. And I'll just add, I know ChatGPT, for example, does translate into a number of languages. It's like 47 or something like that. So, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I imagine in a short period of time, we'll have schools being able to say, here's a newsletter or messages going out to families, and here it is, a link in the following 14 languages. And you could add 5 of those languages might be languages that nobody in your school speaks, but the ability to say translate it also into this language takes 3 clicks, and it's accessible. So it's a wonderful tool for including people and making things more accessible. And I agree with Scott. You know, we need to encourage people to use it in an ethical way and support them to, you know, we'll build some policy and some guidance around that, but it's emerging, it's happening fast. I think ChatGPT came on, I think the first time Scott shared it was like in November, like literally 1 year ago. So in a year, it's come a long ways.
Thank you, Don. Just like to read a quote. Jessica Krogerving has said, "Is it even possible to create or update our APs fast enough to keep up? Would it be better to have increased conversations with students and caregivers about critical thinking and how to question what they are seeing / reading? I finally remember the Canadian House hippos." All right, thank you, Jessica. Greg Keller, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Naomi. Thanks for the presentation, Don and Scott. That was really good. I've been following the rise of ChatGPT and popularity of AI over the last couple of years. And there's one thing that sticks with me. It's with great power, there must also come great responsibility, from Spider-Man, I think that was. And I think a lot of what was said is really important for us to remember, but I also think that's really only scratching the surface. And I don't think we will fully understand what this technology means until we get more experience with it. And I think, you know, Jessica mentioning, you know, maybe needing to talk about, the comment was informing students about critical thinking. Well, AI could write a book for that in about 30 seconds. So, you know, I use this all the time, and the challenges are almost as profound as the benefits. There's already jailbreaks out, you know, if you describe to ChatGPT to act like Dan, for example. Dan's the guy who will do anything, even if ChatGPT is not supposed to do it. And you know, those are the kinds of things that we have to be mindful of. And I think I really see the benefit of using the technology, because I really do think this is going to transform our world. And the way that we become successful at using it in education is to embrace it and get ahead of it, so that we're prepared for the situation when someone decides to use it to create a deep fake, to, you know, do all kinds of things that we can't even imagine it could do yet, because we haven't tried. And it brings me to my question, maybe a 2-part question. As ChatGPT has evolved, it's kind of increased the access to the volume and sort of the relevantness or date, I guess, of information that it can look back to. And the version I think we're at now is 4, maybe 4.5. I think it's 4, which is a paid subscription. And if you want the free one, that's fine, but there's significant limitations compared to the paid version. And I'm wondering, in the education system as a whole, do you think that's something that we would move towards, is providing access to the expanded range of functionality that the paid subscription provides, like, you know, uploading bigger documents, being able to analyze your own website, you know, using it to take a textbook, for example, and upload it, and then be able to ask it questions and create a chat bot that becomes a tutor for our students. So these are all things that are possible right now, but you need to have the subscription. So I'm just not sure what the future looks like. And then of course with that comes all kinds of opportunities like training for staff. Do we develop coursework material that teaches students how to integrate ChatGPT into computer programming classes? Or, now that the students are able to use ChatGPT to write the code, but maybe they don't know how to transcribe that into the app that they can upload to Apple App Store. Guess what? You can do that with ChatGPT if you just know those few extra steps. So I'm just wondering, and that's kind of a question or two in there, Scott, and I'm sorry it wasn't super clear, but is that a direction that you see us going in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Probably like you and most people, I have the ChatGPT 3.5 version, which was updated in September 2021. And the new ChatGPT Plus is up to date. I also understand, Greg, that it can search the internet as well. And whereas ChatGPT 3.5 can't do that. So it's a very, very powerful tool. And so, the answer to your question is absolutely. I've been sort of holding off a little bit before getting the pay version, but just personally, but I think it's well worth it. Yes, I don't know, Dawn.
Yeah, thank you for that, Trustee Keller. As you're talking, I was thinking, we're on one of those moments in time where there's the emerging technologies emerging quite quickly. And for the last year, we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT, and I know there's companies and coders out there that the moment ChatGPT went launched, they were just a little bit behind them, and they're scrambling to catch up to do something even better. And maybe a year from now, we won't be talking at all about ChatGPT. We'll be talking about something that's iterative in a better way and still free. But we've always in education tried to resource our teachers with the best resources they can have. At one time, it was a class set of encyclopedias, and then it was CD-ROMs, and then it was access to the internet and Chromebook and wireless and connectivity. And of course, there's always the need to train and support teachers with the latest too, right? But where do we find the time and resources to do that? And we're at a moment in time now where I think the people that are engaging with it, they're doing it on their own, right? Our teachers in the system are just like Scott's doing, right? They've got a version of it and they're putting in prompts and they're Googling on how they can use it more effectively in their classrooms to support their learners. And we're trying to play catch up as a system to say, how can we support our system to have everybody engage with this? So it's a rapidly changing time. I know that I'm a ChatGPT, I think probably the same version as Scott. So I know that it's not up to date, but I also know the more prompts I put into it, the more I learn about how I can use it more effectively in my work. So yeah, it's a tough question to answer, right? Is how do we figure out where to go next?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. There's a couple of comments I'd like to share. Leanna Pellegrin, thank you, Scott and Dawn. What a wild new world we live in. Appreciate the balance of pros and cons. It's not all negative, even though there is a fear of the great unknown. Feel better about the lack of perfection based on those hands. Ha ha ha. That does bring some comedic relief. Did I do the ha ha? Okay. And then Chris Perrier Everly says, AI can support our teachers to do the great work they already do, but AI misses the ability to connect and understand who students are. Thank you, Chris, for that comment. I would just like to make a comment. I don't see any others. Jessica said, my 16-year-old just said, why? Okay. I'd like to make a comment. I have to admit, I do have a lot of fear about artificial intelligence. I always remember in Stephen Hawkins, one of his last interviews before he became very ill, they asked him what was the greatest threat to mankind, and he said artificial intelligence. So I've never kind of let that one leave my mind. And then when they started to release the chat, I think it was the ChatGPT, there was a lot of people that had been involved in the creation of that, in the building of it. There was a number of people that came out expressing concerns that there wasn't enough safety guards in place yet to really be running it. And then I just saw that Biden's executive order exerts oversight over the safety testing used to evaluate, and they actually specified conversation bots like ChatGPT. So there is concerns about cyber attacks using AI to infiltrate other countries and things like that. And maybe we don't have it all down pat yet, because, you know, back in the 80s, I watched a movie called Terminator. And I just have this little fear about AI, and I appreciate you, Dawn and Scott, outlining the positives of it as well. Got to admit, it's made me want to try to use it, but I don't want it to take it away from students learning how to do proper research and find the proper sources and know what kind of sources to use, because as we're seeing in the world today, that a lot of people are getting misinformation and they're not understanding how to properly vet a source. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, and how we can help our teachers to be able to use that tool in a positive way, and also protect the learning of our students in terms of them demonstrating their learning without it being used as a tool to cheat. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your presentation.
Thanks,
All
Mary.
right. Are there any? I didn't see no more comments. All right. So moving on. There's no correspondence. There is no unfinished business, and there's no new business. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for attending and for those that presented. And I really hope that you have a great evening. Thank you very much.
We need a motion to adjourn.
We need a
Naomi.
motion to adjourn. As I said that, I looked, yes. I forgot about
We're
question
all
period.
popping up on screen.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
no, no, Karen, was there any, there wasn't any questions for question period? Tanya?
Just point of order, Naomi, there's a comment from Jessica that she was hoping that you would read out. You missed a part of it. You missed most of it.
All I see is my 16-year-old just said why.
It keeps going. You can't see the rest?
No.
Okay. May I read it?
Absolutely.
My 16-year-old just said, why don't you just ask students to write on paper? You already said no phones at my school. And then it goes on. So do we start teaching our students how to cite in varied formats earlier?
Interesting. Good questions. I don't know why I couldn't see that. All I can see is the first line. So any comments on that?
Through the chair, yeah, I am looking in the notes. I see that comment there. That's a good comment. In the info sheet, I referenced Dr. John Spencer, who was the speaker at our administrators professional learning that I attended last on October the 20th, and Scott was there as well. One of the comments that he made around which I believe Jessica's 16-year-old is probably referencing, is that desire to lock and block new technologies, right? So if we don't know what to do with things in school, it's like, let's block it or let's lock it out. And generative AI or smartphone use is something that often the temptation is to say, we don't know how to manage this new technology, so we're going to block it to start with. We've done that with websites, right? For social media, it's like, let's block it. And it's not the solution forward. It's often just a bit of a pause button to say, we don't know what to do. And so the easy knee-jerk reaction is, can we just lock it and block it, right? And I found that interesting, right? Because we've experienced that in lots of settings where it's like, we know that's not the long-term solution, but often school systems are like, what do we do with this? We don't know what to do with this. And it's everything from you know, craves around Cabbage Patch Kids to fidget spinners to cell phones. Something takes off and everyone's like, can we just tell the parents to keep it at home, right? Is kind of the response. So I appreciate Jessica's 16-year-old pointing that out, right? It's like, if we go back to paper, then we're losing all of the movement forward, right? It's that default to we weigh the negatives and say we can't risk the upside, so we're just going to block it.
Thank you very much. All right, so I guess we need a motion to adjourn. Okay, Trustee Rokeby is in a seconder. Liana? Okay. There, now I'll say goodbye and apologize for the confusion. And Jessica, your thing didn't come all the way through. Your whatever you put on there didn't come through on my screen. I don't know why. But thank you very much.